I used to work at one of those 24/7 Walmart supercenters. I was right out of high school, 19 and female, and worked as a cashier for 2 terrible years, where I was subjected to all kinds of abuse from customers and coworkers alike. I mean, I was screamed at, slammed into a register face first, groped, and even farted on once because this old lady was mad that oranges were priced each and not by the pound. However, the time that sticks out in my head the most is the time a customer tried to follow me home. I had just started my shift, and the second I got on the register, I had a line about 10 people long. For some reason, the Walmart I worked at never had enough registers open, so people were usually really mad and impatient by the time they got to me. I get right to work and keep a smile plastered to my face while making the minimal mandatory small talk. Most customers were polite, but not very interested in talking, so it's easy to fall into a bit of a cashier robot mode. I get to this guy who only had 2 items, yogurt and Band-Aids. I ring it all up in record time and neatly bag it up, but the customer doesn't seem to be paying any attention. He wouldn't look at me or answer my greeting. His eyes just stared right down at the conveyor belt. Maybe he was a bit zoned out. The conveyor belt didn't look too dirty. I hadn't had a chance to wash it yet because the second I'd walked over to the register, people lined up. I told the man his total, which was something like $4.36, and he starts fishing in his pockets for exact change without looking up. Inwardly, I groan, but keep my customer service smile fixed into place while I wait. He's wearing one of these muddy brown denim jackets with lots of pockets, and as he rifles through, I keep catching whiffs of stale BO and cigarettes. His hands were pretty dirty too, and all dried out from the cold weather. He dumps out an assortment of change on the counter, still not looking at me, and I begin to count it up. Everything is uncomfortably quiet. I can feel the eyes of every customer waiting in the line boring into me, all except the guy who was then digging into his pants pockets too. He was about 30 cents short. I let him know once I was sure he wasn't going to find any more coins. It was then that he looks at me, making this scrunched up face. His eyes were very dark brown, almost black, and they pierced right into me accusingly, as if he thought I was lying or something. While he was watching, I counted everything again. It's only 30 cents. Can't you just give me your employee discount? No, that's against the rules, I answered apologetically. Want to put something back? I wasn't about to get fired for giving someone my discount, which was only 10% if you're wondering. He wasn't the first person to ask for it, but most people pretended they were joking. He definitely wasn't. No, I want them, he said, glaring at me. I was beginning to wish he'd start staring at the conveyor belt again instead of me. It was making me pretty uncomfortable. If I'd had 30 cents in my pocket, I would have paid it up myself just to get this guy to leave. He reaches over to take the bag, but I turn the little bag carousel so that he can't, which was probably a stupid move on my part, but it wasn't like I could let him steal, right? I know you get a discount. Just plug it in. He completely blows up at this point, but I shake my head and look at the other customers, probably with the deer in the headlights expression. People are watching, but no one does anything. This is just something that's inconveniencing them, even though I'm actually pretty scared. I'd already started flashing my register light so that CSM would come, but they were notorious for taking their sweet time. I'll get a CSM, but it might take a few minutes, I nervously offer. But the man just goes off and goes on about how it's not that much and he needs it, with some explicit language thrown in, of course. He leaves before the supervisor comes over, grabbing all of his change and shoving it all into one pocket before stomping off. I'm relieved that he's gone, and continue working in uneasy silence. Everything seemed to go on as normal after that. My shift ends at midnight, and I managed to clock out on time for once. I didn't have a car, and would normally call my mom to come pick me up, but she was out of town and it was too late to call anyone else. I decided to walk rather than waste money on a cab. I lived around 20 minutes away, and felt pretty safe walking because you didn't really tend to run into other pedestrians at that hour. After a few minutes of walking, I noticed a car was driving very slowly behind me. The speed limit was 45 miles per hour, and this car was probably going around 10. I got a bad gut feeling and walked a little faster while trying to rationalize it. It could have been someone who wanted to offer me a ride or get directions, right? But no. Whoever it was stayed behind me and didn't try to pull up next to me at all, even though they were going really slow. After about 5 minutes of this, the car finally turns off into one of the neighborhoods. I was relieved, but it was short-lived. The driver parks his car on the curb and gets out, then comes jogging up to me. I realized immediately that it was the same yogurt/Band-Aid guy. He's wearing the exact same muddy brown jacket and is staring at me with those dark eyes. I turn around and start jogging down the sidewalk, which is still icy, and he jogs up right next to me. I can actually hear the change jingling in his pocket still. He doesn't say anything at first, so I try to run a bit faster without slipping. Had this guy been sitting in the parking lot for hours waiting for me to get off work? Apparently so. I feel him staring at me and turn my head to look at him, while still running as fast as I can on the ice. Inwardly, I thank my lucky stars that there was fresh gravel laid out, or I probably would have slipped in classic horror movie cliché. "What color is your underwear?" he asks. This question horrified and disgusted me, so my immediate reaction was, "Don't be a creep," and I punched him right in the face. It hurt my hand like a bitch, but he stops running for a second and bends forward a bit, clutching his face. I swear I heard him whisper okay, but I just kept running, and I'm too scared to look back. I'm not sure if he kept following me after that, but I didn't run straight home because I was scared of him figuring out where I lived. When I did make it home, probably an hour later, I went to my landlady's apartment first and told her what happened. I was really shaken up, and I told her that if she saw a suspicious guy around the building, that she should call the police. My mom was out of town, and she didn't answer my calls, so I watched Disney movies until I was calm enough to go to sleep. The next day, I told the managers at work what happened, but they didn't care. In hindsight, I probably should have called the police, but I was young and I thought that if it was necessary, management would have told me to do it. I felt pretty angry that they didn't take me seriously or even care that I was scared. I wanted to go home early because I was scared that the guy would show up again, but they told me no and made me go work the registers. I quit shortly after that. I never did see the yogurt Band-Aid guy again, but it's been about 10 years, and I'm not even sure I'd recognize him if I did.
This happened back about a week and a half before Easter. For some background, I am a 29-year-old female, about 5'1", and about 120 pounds. However, most people mistake me for a 15 or 16-year-old girl. The youngest I have ever been mistaken for was about 9 to a 10-year-old kid, but that was by my nanny's best friend, who hadn't seen me in years and just assumed I was one of her great-grandchildren. It was actually quite funny, and we all had a good laugh. Anyways, on to the weird encounter. My mom needed to go to Walmart to pick up a few things that my dad had asked her to get, and some stuff they both needed in preparation for their upcoming trip to go to West Virginia four-wheeler riding on the Hatfield and McCoy trails that they have up there. My mom, dad, one of my sisters, her husband, and my 4 nephews and nieces were going for Easter weekend. This would be my mom's first time going, and she wasn't really happy that they planned the trip on Easter weekend, but they assured her they would be back early Sunday so we could celebrate and have Easter dinner with my other 2 sisters and other 4 nephews and nieces. When we got there, my mom got a basket and headed off to the hair care and pharmacy section, and I told her that I was going to go look in the bedding department to see if they still had any fleece blankets left over that they had on sale for like $2. So she said that if I got done before her, she would still be around that area and to look for her there. I managed to find a few blankets left and got them, and then headed off to find my mom to stick them in the basket. She was right. She was still in the same section, and it seemed like she would be there forever. Across the way, was where they had all of their Easter candy and decorations. So I told her I was gonna go see if they had any of those pooping animal-themed candy dispensers. I love those things. My sister gave me one years ago as sort of a joke for Easter, and coincidentally, I loved it. So she has been giving me one every year since, for Easter, Christmas, and whatever else holidays they make them for. I have quite the collection, and love getting them. It is a long-standing and fun tradition between me and my sister. When I get over to the Easter section, there is no one there but me, and I'm relieved, because most of the time people are flocked there in the seasonal sections like moths to a flame, and refuse to move from their spots to let anyone else get a look. So I'm browsing through and checking out the candy when this guy comes around the corner into the aisle I'm in. He's a nice-looking young guy. He looks to be about 19 to 20, and at first, all seems well. I'm going on looking at all this stuff when I get this feeling as if he is staring at me. So I move down the aisle pretending to look at the stuff while trying to gauge if he is actually staring at me or not. And he is. I thought to myself, okay, he's just a young guy and probably thinks I'm a young girl around his age, and he's just checking me out or something. After another minute or two of this, it becomes clear he isn't looking at anything in the aisle but me, and every time I glance his way, he averts his gaze really quickly and pretends to be checking out a product. At this point, it just becomes too weird for me. If he would have said something, I think maybe I would have felt more comfortable, but he just kept staring holes right through me, and it began to make me feel uneasy. While he was pretending to look at the product on the shelf and trying to look intently interested in it, I seized the chance to quickly move around to the aisle on the other side. He didn't see which way I went, and when I was in the other aisle alone for a bit, I felt that maybe I was just being too paranoid, and that's when I look up to see him standing right next to me. I never heard him or seen him enter, and boom, he's right there all up in my space. I'm kind of startled by this, and then my creep meter goes up, and I start to get the heebie-jeebies and this feeling of something ain't right with this dude. So I move on down the aisle, trying not to show any fear, and a couple of seconds and he's moving right along with me. So I quickly turn around as if I'm looking at something on the shelves behind me, and he does the same. About that time, thank God, some woman comes down the aisle with her buggy and distracts him. More like startles him, so I move to another aisle. I'm in there for a bit before he finds me again, and he slowly starts inching his way closer and closer to me. He's wearing a hooded sweatshirt, and as he gets closer, he starts putting his hands under his shirt, and it sounds like he's fiddling with his belt buckle, all the while stealing glances of me. At this time I'm panicking inside and trying to move away from him, but he follows me everywhere. I look him straight in the face, and he is just staring blankly at me all the while still doing whatever it is he is doing under his shirt. About that time, both the woman from the other aisle and my mom come in. My mom tells me that she is going to the food department, and I just say, I'll go with you. At that point, I wasn't about to go anywhere by myself in that store with that weirdo on my heels. As we leave, he is acting all normal, as if he wasn't doing anything creepy, and picks up a bag of random candy and walks out of the other end of the aisle. Finally, I feel relieved, and that I'm in the clear. So on the way to the food section, I remembered I needed to stop by the pet department and get my dog Otis a bag of his favorite treats. So, my mom continues on to the drink aisle, and as I pick up a bag of dog biscuits, I look to my left, and to my horror, there is this guy again. I'm thinking to myself, what the hell? He has still been following me this whole time, and now he's got me alone again. At this point, I'm really wishing we had come to Walmart when it was like rush hour, and the place was packed like sardines. At least I wouldn't find myself so isolated and alone in aisles with this creepy dude. I get my dog treats and walk as fast as I can out of the aisle headed for the drink section, where my mom said she would be. Thank God she is there, and I stick my treats in the basket and decide I'm not going anywhere else in that store alone. Throughout the whole entire time we were there, he was in every single aisle we went in, just staring me down and looking for any opportunity when he might find me by myself again. But I never gave him the chance. We got our stuff and went to check out. He tried to check out in the line 2 lanes away, in hopes, I guess, of following us out. But thank God the little old lady in front of him picked up something that didn't have a price tag, and she held up that line, and he couldn't go anywhere else. By that time we were finished checking out, and got the heck out of there. As we were loading the stuff in the car, I saw him come out the front door, and just stand on the sidewalk scanning to see where I went. But he never saw me, because I hid on the other side of the car, and he gave up. I told my mom about it on the way home, and she agreed with me that he was acting strangely, in a stalker-like manner, and that he very well must have thought I was just some 15 or 16-year-old girl, alone. Who knows what his intentions were, if in fact I had been 15 to 16, and alone. He may very well have followed me out and tried to kidnap me, but who knows, and I hope no one ever has to find out. So creepy dude in Walmart who stalked me, don't do that to anyone else. Oh, and thanks to you, asshole, I didn't get to look at the pooping animal candy dispensers and see if they had any new ones. You ruined my chances at adding another one to my collection. Luckily my sister found one that I didn't already have.
This happened when I was about 13 years old. I'm 21 now. This took place at a Walmart in my small Ohio town, and involved myself, a female, and my friend Jess, who was about 14. It was a day just like any other. It must have been the weekend because I was staying with Jess at the time. Her grandma needed to grocery shop, so we decided to tag along since we didn't have much else to do. The trip there was uneventful, and nothing happened at first when we arrived. We all walked in together, and as her grandma fetched a shopping cart, we asked her if we could do our own thing. She agreed and said that when she finished, she'd have them call us over the intercom to let us know. So we set off to the opposite side of the store as the groceries. We turned down an aisle and started walking toward the back of the store where they keep the electronics and video games. As we walked, we looked down each of the aisles, just casually checking everything out. To our right, down the aisles a ways, was the toy section, and each time we looked to our right, we had a very clear view of all toy aisles. About 3 or 4 rows down, we look to the right and see a middle-aged man standing in the toy aisle, surrounded by 4 or 5 little kids. The man looks up at us at the same moment we look at him. He smiles and waves his hand as if to call us over. Jess and I just look at each other, laugh, and keep walking. We honestly had no red flags going off because we thought he was waving one of his kids over as they were running around in the aisle. We continue walking to the back, chatting like we usually would and unaware of any danger. We get to the back and start looking at all the cool cell phones we couldn't afford, looking at video games and all that wonderful tech stuff. We head over into the CD and DVD section, and we notice a teenage boy, maybe 15 or 16, standing in the middle of the aisle. He looked at us for a second, and I could see some nervousness and fear all over his face, which made me feel a bit weird because I noticed every sideways glance he'd shoot at us. Eventually we grew bored, so we decided to head back towards the front of the store. I think maybe we were heading towards the clothes section. We round the corner, and it was either the first or second aisle to our left that we noticed a familiar figure approaching us. It was the man from the toy aisle again, but now he was completely alone, and like the last time we had spotted him, he smiled and waved us over. I took a quick glance around us, certain that he was waving at someone behind us, but nobody else was around, just us. Again, Jess and I look at each other, laugh a bit, and walk on, making sure to move fast to lose this guy. We still weren't really alarmed as we should have been, but what are the odds we'd run into that same guy again? Sure, it was strange that he had in fact been waving us over to him, but hey, everything was pretty chill so far. Need I mention we were a bit naive? I should mention something else before going on. Jess and I did this thing back then where whenever we went somewhere in public, we'd pick whatever names we wanted and that's what we'd call each other, just in case anything weird happened. My usual pick was Emily, and normally Jess's was Roxy, but that day she chose Starletta. We get to the clothes section, talking about the guy as we look around, basically window shopping since we had $0 to our name. We were there for about a good 10 minutes, uneventful I may add. We chatted and put the creepy guy out of our thoughts. I'm not sure where we were going next. I just know somewhere at some point we ran into that guy again, and again. And he waved us over, but he seemed much more agitated. This time we didn't laugh. We turned right around and took the hell off. We finally realized that this might be a dangerous situation, and this guy might have weird intentions. It wasn't funny anymore, and it wasn't a game. I'll be honest when I say I cracked for a minute. I was scared, but I knew I had to be tough and use my head. At this point, we decided to find Jess's grandma on the opposite side of the store. We chose to go to the front of the store, where most people and employees are, and make our way to the grocery section where her grandma was. We get to the front and we're walking towards the groceries, past checkout stations and the jewelry section. It was just past this that I immediately noticed these two dudes, one wearing a hat and the other with his hood up. I don't know what made me notice them. Call it intuition. But as soon as I noticed them, they were watching us, and they both immediately looked away when they met my gaze. In that moment, I felt like they were watching us for that guy. I watched as the one in the hat got on his phone and put his head down as he spoke quietly. Jess and I searched the entire grocery section, which is literally half of the store. No grandma. We can't find her anywhere. I'm aware some scary shit might be happening, and we can't find our guardian. Needless to say, we were pretty damn scared. Unsure of what to do, we head back to ground zero, the other side of the store, passing the two dudes, hat guy getting on his phone again. We thought maybe her grandma had gone to that side of the store to find us, so we were hoping to run into her. We go down a main aisle instead of the smaller ones, and we ended up running into a mutual friend, Cal. It was nice seeing a familiar face. We tell Cal about what was happening, and I mentioned the teenage boy we'd seen earlier. Same as the two dudes. I just had this weird feeling the boy was in on it too, since whenever we would pass them, the man would show up. Cal decides to go confront the boy, seeing if he'd spit anything out. Jess and I stayed back, allowing her to approach him alone. After a couple of minutes of them talking, him nervously looking around, eyes wildly flicking between us, her and the area, Cal walked back over and said he didn't say much. I guess she asked if he knew where his dad was, to which the boy said he wasn't sure, so basically it was a waste of time. We walk away, and I'd say 10 minutes passed when Cal inevitably had to leave. We said our goodbyes and we were once again on our own. We head down an aisle, see the guy again, and run. Get to the main aisle, head toward the back of the store, turn the corner, and here he comes again, closer than he's been all this time, and waves two fingers at us, very angrily saying, "Come with me." Jess, bless her heart, was so terrified all she could do was meekly whisper hi. I looked at her. "Hi," I said, as I grabbed her shoulders and shoved her back the way we had been coming, and we both took off running. Jess kept running straight, and I took a quick turn, thinking she'd follow me, but she didn't. It was about 30 seconds later that I realized she hadn't followed, and I panicked hard. I whipped around and ran back, more concerned about my friend than running into that man again. I went in the direction she had gone, a few aisles down, and I found her. She was standing dead still a few feet ahead, and a few feet ahead of her, moving quickly, was the man. He'd be on her in mere seconds, and in that moment I couldn't remember the damn name she had picked. Don't ask me why our aliases came to mind in such a dire moment, but it only lasted a second. As soon as that thought came, I shouted, "Roxy!" To my utter relief, she whipped right around and ran to me. I grabbed her arm and ran as fast and as far as our legs would carry us. We stayed near the center of the store, praying he didn't have any more spies nearby. The fear at this point was overwhelming. God only knows what that weirdo had planned for us. All we knew was that he really wanted to get to us. I remember being so angry that we couldn't find our grandma. We made way back to the grocery section, and again, she wasn't there. We were desperate at this point. This chase was getting tiring, and we were feeling a bit hopeless. We ran into the asshole again and again, and took off running down different aisles. We were stopped by a worker who was scolding us for running, cutting us off every time we tried to plead for help. Jess yells, "Shut up!" and as the woman prepares to defend herself, I say, "There's a man following us and we can't find our grandma." This got her attention. Luckily, another employee, a retired cop, overheard and stayed by our side the rest of this ordeal. The lady went off to look for this guy, and the cop dude proceeded to call Jess's grandma over the intercom. We waited about 5 or 10 minutes before walking to the front of the store, the lady joining us as we all made our way to the grocery section, passing the two dudes, hat guy getting on his phone wide-eyed. We again couldn't find Grandma, so we were walking back to the counter they called her to when here comes the guy again, shopping cart, kids now and all. We hadn't seen those kids a single time in the store since we first saw the guy. We immediately point him out. Cop dude takes us around the corner as the lady approached the man to confront him. A few minutes pass by and the lady walks back to us, the man walking away, and him taking one last look, or more appropriately, glare at us. She said he denied following us, that he was shopping with his kids the whole time. We eventually find Grandma. Turns out she wasn't even in the damn store. She finished her shopping and went out to the car. We ended up leaving, thank God not with that weirdo. I realize now how stupid we were and how terrifying this actually was. The scariest part is how orchestrated it all seemed. People looking out for him on all different sides of the store, because wherever we went, he'd always be there.
A little backstory to set the mood. I'm a reasonably well-built guy at 27 years old at the time, and 6 feet tall, decent muscle mass hidden under a bit too much fat, and I do a rather solid job of hiding service-related injuries to my back and hip. I'm pretty harmless, but the way I look usually paints me as the type of person you wouldn't want to bother. I was out one night having myself a little shopping trip for the weekly grocery pickup at my local Walmart. I actually prefer shopping late at night, since I'm not very fond of crowds of people, and it's very quiet at around 1 a.m. in a relatively small town. I had bought myself a pack of cigars, Garcia Vegas, nothing high-end, just something I enjoy occasionally, and decided to have one in the parking lot before going home. That might sound odd, but I'm a bit of an unsocial shut-in, so relaxing out of the house with a cigar and a can of Monster is pretty nice for me. I was leaning over the hood of my truck puffing away when I heard a rather beat-up sounding truck pull in a couple spots behind me. At first that isn't really any sort of big deal, as I live in the South and beat-up old trucks are everywhere. After the truck shut off, I could make out 2 people holding a rather heated conversation. At this point, there's still nothing to worry me, but I start carefully listening to their conversation. One of the guys was rather angrily berating the other, as he had apparently tossed something out the window on the highway. That is strange, but as he went on it revealed more. Apparently upon seeing the lights of a police cruiser coming up behind them, the one guy had pitched a rather sizable bag of crack out the window. The angrier of the two went on to complain about how that was all the money they had, and now they had nothing to sell. Once again, this isn't really anything out of the ordinary for where I live, and not wanting to attract any attention to myself, I refrained from looking back at them and pretended to ignore them while smoking away. Then, the quieter of the two, who I assume was the one who had pitched the bag, said they would simply need to go rob some people in order to get another batch. At this point, they had my full attention, as there was an officer stopped at the front of the store who I could inform of the situation after they drove away. Things took a bit of a sudden turn when the quieter of the two said, "What about him? He looks like he has money." I'm literally the only person standing out in that parking lot at this time, and it doesn't help that I was parked at the back of the lot. I heard the rather squeaky door of the truck open and close, and the distinct sound of an assisted opening knife pop open slightly, covered by footsteps. I adjusted my position and swapped my cigar to the left hand, intentionally rotating my right hip towards the individual approaching me. Moments after, I heard the footsteps stop and began heading the other direction. You see, thankfully I do live in a state where open carry of firearms is legal, and being a rather paranoid person, I always carry my 1911 when I leave the house. Getting back into my truck, I hear the quieter one start to question why he turned around, being abruptly cut off with, "Do I look like I want to get shot?" Now, taking advantage of the change in situation, I turned around to get a good look at the two. Unfortunately, both of them noticed a bit too quickly and covered their faces. The guy in the driver's seat who had gotten out to approach me started the truck and drove away way too fast for me to be able to grab a plate number in the dim-lit parking lot. I did go and pass on everything that happened to the officer who was sitting in the front of the store, but I doubt anything came of it due to how little information I could actually pass on. Unfortunately, this event made me even more suspicious of people, to the point where I've actually started sleeping with my pistol under my pillow. Part of me wishes I had got in the truck and left when I first started realizing what they were saying. Part of me wonders if I might have saved someone else some trouble by them targeting the wrong person that night. I just hope I never run into the two of them again.